Welcome to the Barents Observer and this podcast where we bring up pressing news and look behind the headlines. My name is Atle Staalesen and today we are going to talk about journalism and specifically about journalism from Russian exile media. And our guest today in the studio is Georgii Chentemirov, former head of the Union of Journalists in Karelia, Russia, and today a journalist at the Barents Observer here in Kirkenes, Norway. Welcome, Georgii.
Hello, thank you.
You recently wrote an article about the changes in U.S. Funding of Russian media in exile. The new U.S. administration is dramatically cutting funding to Radio Free Europe, the flagship in Russian language media in Europe. What could be the consequences for free and independent Russian language media in this situation? What is happening?
Firstly, I want to say that this cutting of funding it influenced of a lot of journalists working in this media outlet. I guess maybe thousands, hundreds journalists at least, and a lot of them they have been working from Russia, or they're exile journalists from Russia. This media worked a huge mountain of the huge volume of work. They covered a lot of topics connected with Russian regions, and after war they made, I don't know, thousands articles about war and consequences of war, killed soldiers, crimes by soldiers, and these kind of topics. So now the main consequences, all these people, all these journalists, they stay without work, without job. And the second consequences, maybe even more important for society at least, that it will be less information about countries with dictatorship regimes, including Russia or Belarus or Iran, because Radio Freedom they wrote not only about Russia, they wrote about all these other countries. And for a lot of countries, this media outlet was the only one source of independent or uncontrolled by the dictatorship regime's government's information.
We know that these funding cuts will affect not only Radio Free Europe but also a big number of other media, Russian exile media. How important are these media? And I must say right away that the Barents Observer is not funded by US money.
Really, this new politics of USA impacted on other Russian exile medias which got funding from this USAID, maybe, as I guess. And this media, these journalists who left Russia, who worked in different European countries, they made a very big work. As example, one media who is asking for support right now, Media Zona, they calculated the number of killed Russian soldiers. It's very important information because, for instance, Russian authorities, they don't show losses on the war. They ignore it, and they try to make a view that there is no war, it's special military operation, and that is special military operation, so no one is killed, no one is, it's okay, no problem with killed soldiers. They are all heroes, we support them, but the number of killed soldiers, and now it's 100,000 people killed in Ukraine, which are calculated very, very directly, so it's concrete persons with names. And they collect these messages about killed soldiers, messages. And you know, it's very important work for not only for Russia, for all society, to show the truth. And it's just one example, one example from hundreds or maybe thousands examples. Mediazona, Novaya Gazeta Europa, all these exile Russian medias, they work the very, very important, they make the very, very important work.
Okay, so we have a brutal war going on in Europe, and we see that Moscow is using huge resources on propaganda and misinformation. So there's also an information war going on. How are independent Russian language media in exile working in this information war?
Firstly, yes, I want to maybe underline that of course there is information war, but I don't want us to think that journalists are the part of information war. I mean, Kremlin started this information war, and propagandists and liars are the part of information war. But journalists, they don't participate in information war. They are not. I mean, how to say? They protect society from information attacks from Kremlin. It seems I see this picture like that. So information war means that you can use all sources, including lie. That's what Kremlin does exactly. But journalism is not about war. Journalism is about truth. Russian exile medias, they close the huge hole in this information agenda because Kremlin always lies, and there are two types of lie: to share lie, that I mean fake information, or to keep silent about any important information. And what these medias did and what they are doing right now, firstly, they ruin these fakes. And secondly, they write about things which Kremlin forbids to write and which Kremlin keeps silent. As example, losses in Ukraine, crimes which Russian soldiers make in Ukraine, huge mountain of crimes made on the Ukrainian territories. Consequences of war, economical consequences, social consequences, all these things which are out of agenda of Kremlin medias, pro-Kremlin or controlled by Russian authorities medias.
So what will happen then with these media that used to be funded by the US? What will happen to Radio Free Europe and also all the other media that are getting funded? Is there a possibility that Europe can take over this role of support?
Yes, it's a very important question, because now when we see debates around these medias, some people tell, okay, they are bad medias, they cannot earn money. If you cannot earn money, please go out, go away. It's not true, because these media, they cannot earn money because Putin and Kremlin cut it all ways of getting money from audience. I mean, if you work in Europe, Russian audience cannot donate you because cards are blocked, because it's consequences of aggressive Putin's war. It's sanctions which are implemented against Russian state. Secondly, if it's even more important thing, if you are media declared as undesirable organization, your audience from Russia cannot donate because it's dangerous. So people reading Novaya Gazeta or Europa or Mediazona or any other medias, they cannot donate because it's forbidden. It's a crime according to Russian law. These media, they cannot live without support. What we see right now, yesterday I saw the session in European Parliament, and there was a big discussion about suggestion to support Radio Freedom, Radio Free Europe, and it was something like one hour, and there were a lot of deputies who made some statements. Some of them, they don't support this idea, as example from Hungary. Some deputies from this AfD, German party, I don't want to say that they are pro-Kremlin deputies, but we understand that there are some political powers in Europe which don't like freedom and which actually support Putin's politics. Well, but the big number of deputies I saw yesterday, at least, they supported this idea. They told about the importance of freedom of speech, because freedom of speech is not the part of democracy. Freedom of speech is democracy. It's not my quote. I mean, it's some kind of common idea. And I'm not sure if this debate will have some real result. I guess it will be, because European Parliament is a serious structure. Maybe I mean what I saw that the majority of politicians in European Parliament support this idea, and as I understand, there are some countries which are ready to support these medias, even if something went wrong. And I think it's very correct idea, because if USA doesn't support, if USA doesn't make funding of this media, someone should do it.
You are one of several hundred Russian journalists that have fled a repressive regime in Russia to be able to continue free and independent journalism abroad. And you are today working in Kirkenes in the Barents Observer. Thank you for that. But what would you say is the general situation for Russian journalists in exile?
General situation is bad. Firstly, because of the situation with funding, I will just shortly repeat that it's almost impossible to get money from the audience because of obvious reasons. It's quite difficult to get money from institutions which used to support this kind of media, and now they don't do it. Secondly, a big number of journalists, they stay in countries which are not safe for them. As example, Georgia. 3 years ago, it was some kind of safety country for Russians and for Russian exiled journalists, for oppositioners, for activists. Now it's not safety country, and a lot of troubles. Not all journalists have possibility to live in Europe, like in European countries, which is much more safety than in Georgia or Kazakhstan. We don't even tell about Belarus. And of course, it makes a lot of tension. It's quite difficult to work in this tension situation when you don't know what will be tomorrow with you and your family. But they continue, they do work, they make very important work.
But we see a Russia that is getting more and more repressive against free voices, and that also includes people abroad. What can you say are regime-critical journalists abroad, are they safe?
Not, they are not. We saw some very concrete cases when, as example, journalist Elena Kostychenko, she was poisoned. Fortunately, she's alive, she's okay, but she was poisoned. Her life was under a big threat. Few weeks ago, there were the massive of articles about Hristo Groziev and Roman Dobrokhotov, journalist investigators. And there was a group of citizens of Bulgaria which were recruited by Kremlin, and they worked as spies. They wanted to kidnap Hristo Groziev and Roman Dobrokhotov and kill them. And fortunately, these people were stopped by special services of European countries. It's a good news, but the bad news that it's possible to find people in Europe who are ready to communicate with Kremlin, to cooperate with Kremlin and FSB, and to make these special operations with this absolutely incredible purpose.
We see repression, but we also see a higher level of censorship every day from Russia, and at the same time we see also self-censorship. To what extent are Russian media in exile self-censoring themselves?
I don't think that Russian media in exile they make any self-censorship. Of course, we see it in Russia, and it's obviously it's only one way to continue work and not to be imprisoned. We see a lot of very good Russian medias working inside Russia, which are forced to follow these repressive laws, not to name war as a war as example, but they still write about repressions and consequences of war, and not naming it as a war. But what about exile medias? I haven't seen any signs of self-censorship. I mean, these medias, these journalists who left Russia, they write about war, they write about crimes of Russian army, they write about repressions, they name Putin as a killer and murder, and I don't see any signs of self-censorship.
But we see still that some media do operate without bylines. Isn't that self-censorship?
No, I mean, it's not. In my opinion, censorship means that you don't share or you don't use some kind of information. That's censorship. If you don't name war as a war, it's censorship or self-censorship. If you don't write about, I don't know, Bucha or everyday bombing of Ukraine because of any reasons, if it's censorship or self-censorship. If you write what you want to write, it doesn't mean that you are under censorship. But another thing, I understand what you're asking about, is the question about safety. A lot of Russian journalists living and work in exile, they have relatives in Russia, and it's normal for people to try to avoid any bad consequences for their relatives. Then, as we told just 2 minutes ago, these journalists are not they're not in safety. Even if you work in Germany or if you work in Georgia, you are not in 100% safety. It's normal for people to try to protect themselves, or it's normal for people to try to protect their relatives who are in Russia under control of Russian regime, and every second police can go and to kick out, to break the door and to make a search and to detain their parents or relatives. It's a question of safety.
It's increasingly hard to get information, to get accurate information from Russia. How are you working with sources and information?
Fortunately, Russia is quite a digitalized country. A lot of information we can see it in internet. We can of course, social nets, as example, we can search some news in social nets, these crazy pro-military patriotic events in kindergartens, in schools, in universities. We can find it in social net and to write about it. We can find a lot of documents. We can see how regions spend money on occupied territories, how they spend money on these soldiers, how they don't spend money on something really necessary things for people living on these territories. They don't have money to repair water facilities, but they have money to pay soldiers for signing a contract. We see it in documents. We can look in tender base. We see court decisions. As example, just a few days ago, I wrote an article about Ukrainian who was sentenced to some 7 years in jail because he didn't want to participate in war against Ukrainian army. It was published on the website of the court. We can find this kind of information. Before we can talk with people, but now we cannot because we are declared as undesirable organization, which means that people we are talking with, they are under threat.
Yeah, you mentioned undesirable organizations, and there is a growing number of media outlets in exile that are declared undesirable, and that includes also the Barents Observer. Can you say what the consequences of this new status has for your work as a journalist?
Shortly, to work in undesirable organization and to work with undesirable organization, according to Russian law, is a crime, or at least violation. So, as example, if I call someone in Russia and take interview and publish it, this person could be punished. Okay, maybe this person will not be in prison right now, but it will be fined, it will be punished, it will be persecuted, and we cannot risk. We made a decision not to make this kind of work because we cannot get responsibility. We cannot have responsibility for people which we cannot protect. And for me, as a journalist working in undesirable organization, of course, I can be punished, I can be fined, as example, I can be persecuted as a criminal. There are some criminal cases against journalists, against editors. As example, Kirill Martynov, who got his criminal case because he is the leader of undesirable organization Novaya Gazeta Europa. These kind of consequences.
Georgii Chentemirov, thank you for participating in this podcast. Thank you for listening. Keep on following our news. We cover daily the situation in Russia and in the north, including the situation with journalists and independent and free media. Stay tuned.